This week, we have a real treat on the show. I am being joined by Monica Swanson, who has written several books and has a brand new book coming out specifically for homeschoolers. It is her first book, as I understand it, on homeschooling, and I cannot wait for us to talk all about it. It's a great book. You're going to love it. So, Monica, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. So great to be here. I'm honored.
Well, I am thrilled to have you. Just to let everybody know, I was connected to Monica through a mutual friend who reached out to me one day and was like, "You have got to meet this girl. This is somebody that you need to know." And anytime somebody does that, I take special notice. And she was absolutely right. I have found Monica to be just a kindred spirit, similar hearts for the Lord, for our family, for the people we're able to serve. And so, Monica, can you tell us all a little bit of your story and kind of how God has led your family through the years?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that kind introduction. And it's just been such a joy to get to know you, Leslie, and after so many years of following your ministry and being a fan. So this is an honor. Yes, so I'm here on the North Shore of Oahu in Hawaii, where my husband and I have pretty much raised our 4 sons. We've lived in Hawaii 23 years, but we're both from the Pacific Northwest. And I mean, the nutshell story would be that my husband and I were both raised in public schools in the Pacific Northwest. We got married, we moved to Hawaii. We really hadn't had many conversations or talked about or thought about schooling. I think we just kind of assumed we would do things the way we were raised. But once we had our own kids and we started looking around us and, we are both committed to our faith and God was at the center of our marriage, and then started the kids in a private Christian school, which was a great experience for those first few years. But when my oldest son was in first grade, he knew a couple kids, I think, through church that were homeschooled. And he came home one day and said, "Hey, Mom, what if you homeschooled me next year?" And at that point, I was like, oh boy, like that had never even really been on my radar, crossed my mind. So once he said that, I kind of couldn't shake it. And I started to think about it and pray about it. And my husband was afraid of the idea. Yeah, we both had some stereotypes from the few kids we knew growing up who were homeschooled. But I convinced my husband to give us a 1-year trial run. And by the end of that year, he was so on board. And I think more than I was, he was just seeing the fruit, seeing the character develop. So with that, we became a homeschool family. And I've learned so much along the way, of course, made mistakes. But once I kind of started my writing after my 4th son was born, I just started a blog and never really knew where I was going with it. But one thing led to another. And couple parenting books have come out. My book, Boy Mom, came out in 2019, and then Raising Amazing came out just a year ago. But it was as I wrapped up Raising Amazing, and I was writing a chapter, and I wanted to mention homeschooling just briefly, but all of a sudden, one paragraph led to the next. And when I turned it in, my editor was like, I feel like you got a little extra passionate here. So maybe we should cut this and instead put it in your next homeschooling book. And I was like, whoa, let's do it. So I kind of felt like maybe I needed to tell the whole truth as much as I'm passionate about parenting. And I'm like, I want to encourage parents, whatever form of education they're choosing. I want to encourage families. But if I'm honest, homeschooling is like one of I'd say number 2 next to my boys' relationship with Jesus. Homeschooling is what has shaped them the most. And I just had to come out and tell it. And that's what's in this book.
Yeah, it is true. Homeschooling is, it's just such a good tool for parenting. It's a good tool for discipleship. It gives you so many opportunities, and it does become a huge part of your story. So, as you were talking about your family, as you were noting in Raising Amazing, it's hard to not tell all about. This is such a part of your DNA now that I'm so glad that the Lord opened the door for you to share all that you had learned, because becoming homeschoolers, which for those of you watching online, this is what it looks like. It's a beautiful book. Becoming homeschoolers is such an incredible nuts and bolts, how you do it, why you do it. You're able to cover an unbelievable amount of territory in a single volume in a way that's engaging and encouraging and hopeful. So what were you really hoping to accomplish from writing this book?
Excuse me. Well, I love practical. I'm always the one that's like, okay, I love warm fuzzies and I love good writing, but I'm always like, but just tell me what to do. I just need to know what to do. And that's always kind of been the style in my books, is to get as practical as I can, give good examples, help people who are like, just help me through this stage. So that was the goal here. Was I know there's so many people out there right now who are maybe on the fence, who've thought about homeschooling, but it scares them or they don't think they could do it. And I wanted to just grab their hand and say, here, let me show you how. Like, I did all this without knowing much. So the truth is, I don't think you need to know everything.
Exactly.
I think you can get through just loving your kids and having a few resources. But for those who I know are out there who are like, no, I need to know. Can I get my kids into college?
Every step of the way.
Yes. Is, all the details. I was like, I'm going to have a packed resource section. So whatever we cover, if it's something I don't know, well, I'm going to find somebody else who does, and I'm going to point you to them. So it's really just a practical, helpful guide, hopefully super encouraging. I've had a lot of people who read it ahead of time say it just has so much joy in it. And that blesses me, because my homeschool experience has been such a joyful one.
Well, and I would second that. It is, as I look back now, I've got 3 that have launched. We had such good times together. The memories, that the strength of our family was just enhanced so much by the relationships that we were able to build by doing everything together. Which was just awesome. And I love the way that you start the book with the life they'll thank you for later. The whole first section, you talk about the life they'll thank you for later, which I think resonates so much, because one of the things that holds so many back is being so fearful that you're going to ruin their life, or you're going to ruin your relationship because of it. Why did you choose that wording? I love that wording.
Oh, thank you. I do too. Well, I've always kind of, in my parenting books, encouraged parents to keep their eyes on the prize. I always say it's so easy to get hung up on today's battles, on whatever's going on, the next fire you have to put out, the next diaper, the next mess. But I always have said, keep your eyes on the prize. What you're raising will one day be a young adult leaving your home into the world. What matters most on that day? And let's keep focused on the things that really matter the most. And so when I talk about a life they'll thank you for later, I'm thinking I have a 24-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 20-year-old. All 3 of them have thanked me. They've just said, I'm so glad we were homeschooled. And I know that I could get caught up in some of the nitty gritties, the hard days, the long days, the things I didn't do as well as I could have. But really, they're thanking me now. And I just want to tell parents, like, hang in there, because today's battles, today's hard times are so worth it when you have a young adult. 3 John verse 4 is it, that says, I have no greater joy. I don't know why I'm forgetting. It's my favorite parenting verse. Anyway. I think it's in here.
We'll put that reference in the show notes.
I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. And that is, without a doubt, the greatest joy of my life is looking at my young adult sons going, they love the Lord.
Yes.
And so it's worth it all. It's worth it all. And yes, if you can hang in there, your kids will probably thank you later.
Oh, absolutely. And even as you were talking there, I was thinking how often we're sitting around we don't get to sit around the table as often as I would like anymore. But when we all are sitting around the table, there's so much laughter, and they're sharing, and they're recounting things that were fun and good. And they're not saying, you remember when you lost your temper on me, Mom, or when we didn't finish, whatever, or when you went off the handle because my science fair project wasn't done, or whatever it is that we are gagging on at the moment. That doesn't matter. That washes away so quickly. But what stays with them is the times that I invested in relationships, the way that we played outside, the hikes that we took, all of these things. These are the things that now that they're adults, they're looking back, and that's what they remember, not my mess ups. I'm much more likely to focus on those. They don't.
Yes. And I think it's that overall culture in your home that they remember. They may not even have those specific memories, but they're going to just remember the warmth, the love, the security, the safe place that they had at home. And that's the stuff they hold on to and take with them when they leave the home.
Well, and it makes them want to come back.
Yes.
We have found they're dropping in. They
Yeah.
still love to talk to David and
Hmm.
I. It's not like the relationship ended. It's
Right.
shifted, it's changed, it's matured,
Exactly.
but it
Yes.
hasn't ended and it hasn't soured. And so much of that, I really do give God praise for leading us to homeschool when he
Mm.
did, because it gave us so much more time with our kids than we would have had otherwise.
Oh, absolutely. That is the key. And that is the only way to live out, Deuteronomy chapter
Yeah.
6, and which you quote and I quote. I mean, it's a favorite homeschool verse, but there's no doubt that we can't share God's commands and God's ways with kids when we get up, when we walk along the way, when we lie down, if they're not with us all day.
Right. Right.
So it's really the greatest gift.
It so is. I know that you have been sending out copies. It hasn't come out just yet when we're
Right.
recording this,
Right. Right.
but it's coming out May 7th. What kind of feedback have you gotten so far from those who have read it? What
Mm.
has really stood out to people? Because I think that that's really instructive for those who are getting ready to pick it up, kind of what they can be
Hmm.
listening for and reading for.
Yes. Well, I've had a great time having a launch team for this book, and it's just been such a blessing. You write a book, you have these hopes, and then when you hear people commenting, saying the things that you hope for, you're like, oh, phew, thank you, Lord. But
Mhm.
I'd say two things that I'm hearing a lot. One is because this book is written, yes, hopefully for homeschoolers, the whole middle section of the book is what I call preschool to college. So if you've got little ones and you're anticipating, the nitty gritties of high school, that's covered. If you're thinking about college, are your kids going to want to go? How can you prepare them? So it's very much a guidebook in the middle section. So the two things I'm hearing is one, from the people who are homeschooling, but maybe starting to either feel burned out or doubt themselves, or maybe their kids are talking about wanting to try going to school. What I'm hearing is this has reminded people of why they homeschooled in the first place.
Mm.
It's just they're reading through these 20 good reasons to homeschool,
Mhm.
and they're just going, oh, yeah, I'm not just doing this because, but I'm doing this because there's a lot of good reasons
Yeah.
across the board in so many categories. I'm also hearing from people, one thing I love is they feel like this book has given them good information for the conversations that can be
Mm.
difficult, whether it's with family members or friends who aren't fans of homeschooling and maybe want to challenge them, or maybe with people who are thinking about homeschooling and they really want to encourage them, but they don't know what to say. Well, this is giving them a lot of just easy bullet points, some research, some good nuggets that to have on hand so that they can have these conversations and really feel equipped.
Yeah, it also is it it gives phrasing, it gives words to
Mm.
what a lot of people want to
Hmm.
say, but they
Yeah,
can't quite figure out
totally.
how.
Yes.
And that is a huge help as you
Mm.
are, relationships are so important in homeschooling.
Hmm.
And I talk a lot about this when you get questioned by your mother or your mother-in-law, your aunt, or whoever
Yes.
it is. It's first of all, you have to remember they love your children too. They are
Yes.
probably coming at this because
Hmm.
they love your kids and they're worried about them. So
Hmm.
we have to remember that. But to be able to have a good answer, to be able to
Yes.
have data and things that back up what you know in
Hmm.
your heart to be true
Yeah.
is just it's such a confidence builder as you're going
Mm.
into difficult conversations.
It
And
is.
so to find a book that gives a lot of that, I think is a real
Mm.
treasure.
Thank you. And I just will add to that because I do think when it comes to homeschooling, it is a topic that can bring up a lot of emotions.
Mm.
I think sometimes when you're talking about it, it brings up maybe a little bit of a defensiveness in other people because maybe they're not doing it. And maybe they feel convicted like they should be, or maybe they just don't know much about it. But it can be an uncomfortable thing. And so I always want to approach the topic with grace, with
Mm.
thoughtfulness. I want to build bridges. I don't want it to be a divisive topic. So I really worked hard and of course had a great editor that helped me come up with, some really concise sections that will help us have these conversations, but to do so with grace and respect.
Yeah, yeah, and um, it's very clear that you put a lot of thought and
Thank
care
you.
into that, and so but I want you, like we noted, really back at the very beginning, there's a lot of real practical stuff in here, a
Mm,
lot of just nuts and bolts.
mhm,
But you also give a lot of good reasons, a lot
mm,
of good a good foundation for why, both on the
mhm,
positive side, but also on the negative side,
mm.
because you really key on the things that you're able to avoid, the things
Yeah,
that your kids will miss out on.
yeah,
Can you give us some of those? Because I
totally.
thought that again, it's just a really good thing
Mhm.
to think about, and
It
it really
is.
does reinforce your
It
will to go forward when you think about some
absolutely.
of these things.
Yes, yes. So I followed my 20 good reasons to homeschool with 10 things homeschoolers get to avoid, which probably in today's world, a lot of what is motivating families right now to homeschool has a lot to do with things we hope our kids will
Yeah.
avoid. And interestingly, I think near the top of that list, research has shown is families are really concerned about school violence. I mean, I think the likelihood of most of our kids experiencing school violence is probably really low, but still, who wants to even think about that? And I say, well, homeschooling kind of solves that one right off the bat, right?
Yep.
But then there's also so many issues culturally, from the gender issues, from the different cultural issues that are being just really taught from kindergarten and up right now in public schools. We get to avoid all of that because parents
Mm.
are the best people to introduce their kids to these subjects, to talk about these subjects, to help their kids learn critical thinking skills. This all happens best in the home. And so when we send our kids to school, we're allowing somebody else to really form their heart, to shape their thinking. And we get to avoid that as homeschoolers. I also love to flip the script on the socialization question. And that one comes up at least twice, if not three different places in this book, because it still comes up. I mean, as much
I
as many of
Which
us
is
are,
mind-boggling.
I'm like, really? Yes. And I confess in there, I'm like, when you bring that up to a homeschool mom, you're probably, depending on the day and their mood, you're either going to get real understanding because a lot of us had that same question at one point. I
Mhm.
know I did.
Yep.
But you also might get a little irritation because we're so over it. We're like, really? But I like to flip the script on that and say, I'm so thankful my kids get to avoid the kind of socialization that
Mm.
goes on in a traditional school setting. So I give some good information on that and how we can communicate that again with grace. But
Mhm.
so, yes, there's a lot that our kids get to avoid by being homeschooled, and that from spiritual things to, practical things. Bullying in schools is a real problem. All the influences that come through technology. Oh, the list goes on and on. I get really
Yeah.
excited.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But like you noted, even though a lot of people today are actually running from something,
Hmm.
that's not ever going to be enough to keep you in this for the long haul.
You're right.
Because if you're running from something, one
Mm,
bad day can
amen.
knock you off that, or the bully can leave, the bad teacher can move on. There's a lot of reasons that
Yes.
that can just dissipate. So you also give us a lot of good reasons too.
Hmm.
So can you
Yeah.
kind of give us some insight into some of the really
Yes.
good reasons too that will actually be life-giving and actually keep you in the race?
Yes. And that is such a good point. I love that you noted that because it's true. We need motivation that sticks. And I mean, I like to think about the things that really matter most, and I think you're gonna agree, Leslie, with the things that matter to me. I'm looking at my kids, again, their relationship with God, like, what better place to shape their heart, but
Hmm.
also our relationships with our kids and their relationship with one another. My 4 sons from age 24 down to 13 are all best friends.
Yeah.
Right now, as we're talking, they're planning a road trip together when son number 2 graduates from college. I'm just like, thank you, Lord, for this bond
Hmm.
that they have that would have been really hard to form if they were all scattered going different directions. So those kinds of things are at the top of my list. But for a lot of people who are concerned about academics and really worried about college applications, I give some good information in there about the fact that homeschool kids perform really well on
Yeah.
SAT tests, that colleges are actually seeking out homeschoolers because they're discovering that they're actually really self-directed learners, very
Exactly.
responsible. They do really well in college. And so if those kinds of things are on someone's mind, I'm like, hey, that's all here. Those are all good. But also let's talk mental health. Let's talk about, the choices they're making as adults. Those who are
Hmm.
homeschooled are coming out on top, making great life choices, having strong families. Oh, it's just so good. Every category of life it seems to be covered there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and one of the things that I learned as I was doing some research for the Heart School book is whether you are in a public school environment, a Christian school environment, or a homeschool environment, the number one indicator of success for our kids is the engagement of the parents in
Yep.
their lives.
Mhm.
So if that is the number one marker for
Yep.
successful kids, wouldn't we want to be more engaged in their lives?
Exactly.
In all
So
of
good.
these things.
I just love it. I get really
So
fired up.
yeah, and to your point about the colleges, we are finding through Teach Them Diligently, through a lot of research that we're doing, colleges are now actively seeking homeschoolers for all the reasons that you mentioned, as well as for the fact that they are good critical thinkers. They are comfortable in any social environment. Again,
Yes.
now they're seeing what
See?
the socialization
Right.
actually does. And so there's been this massive shift in
there has.
college trajectory for homeschool
Yes.
kids,
Yes.
because the data now backs up that our kids are excelling well beyond their traditionally, and I always use that loosely,
I
their
know.
traditionally schooled
Right.
peers. They are
Yes.
doing really, really well.
Yeah.
And that would indicate that moms all around the world who are pouring into their kids, who all feel like they're not doing it well, are
Amen.
actually very successful because our kids are doing great out there.
That is so well said. I couldn't agree more. And I know that my boys who have gone to college, they have said they feel like college is almost just an extension of homeschooling. They're like, the only difference is we have to walk to a class and sit down, but they're like, we were so well prepared because just like homeschooling, we need to manage our time. We need to decide our priorities. We need to get things done. And some of their friends have actually really struggled because they went to a setting where somebody else told them what to do every day. And they, didn't have a lot of independence in that process. My boys are like, we feel like we're still being homeschooled. So it's kind of fun to hear that from them.
Oh, it is. And I actually heard the same thing from my three older ones. One of the things that they noted was in college, the professors don't give you everything that you need.
Exactly.
You have to know how to go find more information, go deeper, and so on. And so our kids are very well equipped for that. Whereas, if a child has been spoon fed everything or taught to tests, they're just not. And so
Exactly.
just another way that homeschooling is phenomenally impactful from an academic standpoint, as well as being life-changing from a spiritual, emotional, mental, familial, and every other good way.
And I love that you mentioned just a moment ago, for all of us parents who in the process don't feel like we're giving them what they need. There's no doubt. I mean, I was busy when those first three were all in high school years, and then I had a younger one. And I was not the mom that was in their business every day. Like they were pretty much independent. And I remember, I feel a little bad when I look back, but I'm like, because now I've got one at home homeschooling. So I'm pretty available to him when he needs me. But I'm like, I remember when they struggled with algebra or geometry, I wasn't available to help. They would just go back and rewatch a video, reread a section, reread it. And then finally it would just click. They were like, well, what else could I do? I didn't have anyone else. I was like, you were learning to learn. And what better way to prepare for college and life than to just learn how to learn. So
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I found as the kids were in high school, particularly in high school, and even kind of leading into college, was because I was busy. I mean, my kids line up almost exactly with yours. My youngest is a little older than yours, but because you're divided, you're doing your own, you're kind of having to give everybody what you can. When they drop a ball, when they fail, they have to deal with the consequences of that, and they have to figure out how to get to the other side of it, make it right, have the character to move on. Whereas every part of us as moms wants to intervene and not let them fail or not let them have the consequences of that. But I think God puts us a lot of times in a situation where we don't even have the choice to mess that up. They are having to deal with that, and it makes them so much more mature, so much stronger in character. It does so much for them, and I think that's one of those gifts that God gives us as busy moms that we don't see as a gift in the moment, but we can in our hindsight see how good God is through that.
Yes, so well said.
So what what then is, if someone picks up this book,
Mhm.
whether they are, new to homeschooling or just thinking about homeschooling,
Mhm.
what is your heart that by the time they close it and they have finished, that they are walking away from
Mhm.
after reading it?
Yes. Well, I state, and I sincerely mean it in the book, that as much as I'm pro homeschooling, I'm really pro family.
Yeah.
And so, what I hope is that no matter somebody's circumstance, because there may be someone who reads it and they're like, I'm just not ready yet. And I respect that.
Mm.
But I hope that they just see the value of being intentional and invested and recognizing. I mean, sometimes in the busyness of our family life, we're not looking around and going, wow, the world really has changed. And there really is an enemy after our
Yeah.
kids' hearts. And we need to do our due diligence to protect them and guard their hearts. So I hope that parents will just really recognize the beauty, the value of their role as parents and in shaping their kids' hearts, whatever that looks like. But of course, I'm really hoping that a few people who weren't sure if they could do it will say, I think I can do this. I think I'm ready to give homeschooling a try. Maybe I'm ready to stick with it, recommit. One fun thing I like to talk about is the difference between the families who say, I'm going to give homeschooling a try, and if it doesn't work, I can always go back, which is
Hmm.
fair enough. I say that in the book. I'm like, worst case
That's
scenario.
where I started.
Yes,
So,
yes.
that is,
But
I think that's where a lot of us start.
yes, but I think you'll agree with me. I was just talking with Dorinda Wilson about this, and we were saying there is this beautiful shift when you decide, you know what? I want to be a homeschool
Yep.
family. I don't want to just commit for a
Absolutely.
semester or a year, but let's just do this. Let's make this part
Yep.
of who we are, our mission statement, our family culture. When you do that, something really beautiful happens.
Hmm.
And it's like your kids own it a little more, you own it more, you're more invested. All of a sudden, you just kind of can appreciate the experience that much more.
Yeah.
So I hope some people who are just dabbling in homeschooling will say, let's do this. Let's become homeschoolers. So
Yep, absolutely. And, just to kind of tack on to that, once you do make that decision that you are going to become a homeschooler,
mhm.
it gives you so much peace because you're
Mm.
able to settle into life rather
Mhm.
than things feeling
Yes.
temporary. And
Yes.
that is a massive thing for you as mom. It's massive for
Mm.
your kids. It's
Mhm.
massive for your marriage because
Yep.
now you're able to build structure for this new life. And
Absolutely.
that is so, so important.
Yes. And Dorinda and I were even comparing it to marriage and
Yep,
the difference in our culture's view of marriage, which is, well, if it doesn't work, we can always end it, or saying, no way, we're in this for a lifetime.
exactly.
And I think homeschooling, same commitment. And it's just such a beautiful thing.
It is. It is. Well, Monica, where can everybody connect with you? Where can
Mhm.
they find your book when it comes out
Mhm.
here on May 7th?
Mhm.
So how can we get connected with you?
Definitely. Thank you. Well, my home base is my website, monicaswanson.com. And that's where you can find I have a podcast and lots of blog posts from the last 13 years. But and the book is everywhere. The books are sold. That love that phrase. Amazon has it. If people are listening to this before it comes out, we have some really great pre-order bonuses. But if this airs after it comes out, then if this airs after it comes out, I'd be happy to shoot those over to you, Leslie, so that you can include them in show notes.
Well, yay, that would be great. We will make sure that one way or the other that you are able to get those bonuses because they are awesome.
Thank you.
So again, Monica, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It's
Mm,
been so much fun.
so great talking to you. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. And to everyone else, thank you for hanging out with us today. There is nothing in this world that is more important or more impactful than really investing your heart and
Mhm.
soul in the way that you parent and disciple and
Mhm.
educate your children.
Mhm.
Getting a book like Becoming Homeschoolers, in coming to conferences like Teach Them Diligently, getting involved with Teach Them Diligently 365, these are just ways to really reinforce your resolve
Mm.
to do it well, to become an
Mm.
excellent home educator as you are also becoming an amazing, godly, biblical parent.
Mm.
We want to encourage you to do that. So check out the book, Becoming Homeschoolers. We will give you a link to that. Be sure you check the show notes to get a link to where you can pick up those pre-order special freebies because you were going
Mhm.
to want those extra resources. And then be sure that you go to Monica's website and check her out there. She's just got a lot to share share, a lot of wisdom and a lot of grace with which she shares it. So I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.